Hello, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining. My name is Zach Finelli, and I'm going to be covering Lens Autopilot today. This Lens Autopilot helps you reduce the complications around the Kubernetes ecosystem. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to cover where are we at right now with Kubernetes and cloud native, some of the big challenges there. And what we've done with our customers of how to overcome some of these challenges, and then also a dive into specifically how we do that. So this is what we're going to cover today. So today, cloud native, as we can see, as this animation loads here, I'm not sure why the pictures aren't showing, but 89% of oh, here we go. 89% of organizations are running Kubernetes. That's a very high number. When I compare that to about 5 years ago, it was most people couldn't even pronounce it. So this is the direction that everybody's heading in cloud native, and there's many reasons for that, and we'll go into that in a little bit. And we're also seeing, and from some of my field experience, I also forgot to say I'm a solutions architect here at Mirantis. So I'm out in the field with our customers, seeing how they're using Kubernetes and helping them make solutions for that. So from what I see, these numbers seem very accurate. And what we also see is 95% of organizations are that they need training to be able to fill this gap. And I know from myself that myself included, getting started with it, that absolutely that most people, that there's a lot to figure out there, and that most organizations are having challenges with it. This is also very normal, and also the tooling in the ecosystem. As we can see, like 51% of developers feel burnt out, and a lot of that can be also due to the fact of not working on core value. Like with developers, they like to work on the core value, develop the applications, not necessarily work on the infrastructure or anything else around that. So back to some of the reasons why, just briefly, why we see some customers going to Kubernetes. Just to solidify it, one of the main reasons is getting the web scale features out of the box. So Kubernetes, right away, deploying on a platform, you get load balancers, you get networking, and you're able to abstract away all this infrastructure and build all this yourself as a developer without needing a giant team. And also you get the consistent experience of building your application from on whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. You get a consistent experience across the board. So really the value of Kubernetes is its API, and that's what most developers are along with many other benefits. So those are some of the top reasons of why we see a lot of customers going to it. So it's even considering all these challenges, the benefits of Kubernetes outweigh that. So that's what we're seeing out there. Like initially, you think this complexity and all these challenges around it, which we're going to go to in a second, would stop them, but most organizations are diving into this challenge and moving forward. So just a personal story of getting started with Kubernetes. I started with Kubernetes about maybe I think 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and I did it in the consulting space, helping a lot of our customers with their software engineering products and practices. And Kubernetes, they initially, I initially heard about it, and our clients didn't really hear about it, but I was checking out what it was, and what I initially saw was I built an application on Kubernetes, and I saw you see the value of it right away. Like as we mentioned before, you get to build a web scale app without lock-in. You're able to build all this infrastructure without needing all these teams, and thus you're able to build applications in a consistent way, on any platform, with all of these features enabled out of the box. And that's exactly what you want as a development team. However, when I was first building Kubernetes, I was setting things up, and I saw that there was a lot, that Kubernetes was very complicated, even for engineers to understand. Kubernetes, for example, like when I was deploying my application, I went to set up security, and I saw that the role-based access control, all the roles for that wasn't set up by default. The way that I was using secrets and information, that wasn't very easy to use. And when you're a developer, you need something very stable, and you want something like, do I trust myself, or do I know enough to put this into production? How would I deploy my applications? How would I observe them? And those were like, just developing and putting your application out there was difficult enough, but with all these other complexities around it, it eventually became, you quickly realize that that it's very difficult to do this on your own, and even without help. So I had to consult a lot of my friends and colleagues to even get by the basics, and to run it in production in a very stable and secure manner. That's a whole other field that I know if I delved into that as a developer, I would burn out. I'd want to just focus in on my application. So next, I'd like to go into, well, what are the things in the Kubernetes ecosystem that make it very complicated? What are the components there that you really need to have a successful Kubernetes platform, so you get that full experience of and you get all those benefits of Kubernetes? So we work with, as a solutions architect, I've worked with a lot of customers, and a lot of them don't even know about a lot of these practices that you need for Kubernetes. Oftentimes they'll start out with just deploying Kubernetes, but you need all these components around there. And I'd like to go into what each one of these are. The very first thing, probably the biggest challenge with Kubernetes right out of the gate is deploying your code. So we've all heard of CI/CD practices. CI being a tool that builds your code and then deploys it. It just builds your code in a unit test, and then the CD part, the continuous deployment. This part deploys the application in automated fashion as much as possible. So when your code is built in a container, so to say, you need the CD practice to be able to do that, and you need to be able to build these things called pipelines, which are basically it's basically code that defines how and where you release code. So, for example, you as a code release process, you could have something like, you need to be able to scan your code for vulnerabilities. You need to be able to deploy it to QA first, a bunch of different things. So that's what these tools do. And to be able to do that with Kubernetes by itself, you need these specialized tools for it. And to be able to set up then and configure that, it's very complicated. The next really challenging aspect of Kubernetes is the observability. To be able to see what's going on. When Docker Compose was around, I remember it was very hard to see, hey, is my application up and running? Is it crashing? Why? What are some of the logging? What are some of the getting access to the logs, seeing some of the performance and the gathering the metrics, and then also being alerted to see what's going on. So that's also very complicated. The other piece is the security. So being able to harden Kubernetes is not hardened by default. You need to make sure that all your network policies are being enforced. You need to make sure that they're set up correctly. You need to make sure that let's say a security breach happens and there's a shell that's being launched inside a container. You want to be alerted by that. Another thing about Kubernetes is, as I mentioned before, it doesn't secure your secrets by default. So what that means is that, let's say you have a database username and password for an application. It's not encrypted by default in Kubernetes, and you need to. And when you have a real production team, you need to be able to do that. You need to be able to scan your images to make sure that there's no vulnerabilities, and you also need to make sure that all the roles, the role-based access control, and all the users, that they're set up and they're not set up correctly, and they're not given extra permissions that they don't need. And the final piece is the reporting. So what this would mean is you're going to want, when you have your Kubernetes cluster out there, there's a lot of configuration out there. So and you're going to want reports to see, hey, A, are you running all the recommended security settings on it? B, is this configured optimally? And then also Kubernetes, you're also going to want some reports on performance metrics. Like let's say you allocate an application and you need to make sure that it's not let's say like it's being underutilized. You want to make sure that you're not over provisioning resources for that. So you're going to want a lot of reports and things around that. So if you were to do all these components by yourself, this could take years and months. And I know myself on a team, I would not want to personally deal with that. I would just an ideal solution as a developer, I would want to make sure that I press a button and then all my code gets released. I don't have to worry about configuring all these things. Some people like to do that. I know I personally wouldn't, and I know that if I was a manager, I would want all this. I would want all this set up. So, and in addition, there's another layer of complication on top of this. Is in the cloud computing, cloud native computing foundation. There's several different tools for each one of these components that you need to cover. So, how do you know what to decide? So, just you need to be able to research and build and test and configure everything. That could take months to years. So what would be the ideal solution as a developer? So before we jump into Lens Autopilot, I know me, I would like something, I'd like to have a configured tool set to where I'm able to press a button and I get to release my code. All the observability is all set up and configured. I also don't have to tinker around with Kubernetes security, and I don't have to worry about logging metrics and alerting. And then also, with all that tool set out there, I would also like a partner to be able to help me in this experience. So what we've developed for customers is a platform called Lens Autopilot, which addresses all that. So this right here, one of those things is I'd also like to say before that, with all those complications, that can slow down your productivity. And I know you want your Kubernetes application out there. So what we did is we built Lens Autopilot here, which reduces that operation complexity of the ecosystem around Kubernetes. What Lens Autopilot, we worked with a lot of different customers and we got to see like, hey, what were they using? What were they not using? What did they really want? What should they have out there? This is our opinionated view of what a successful Kubernetes ecosystem looks like. And the way that we deliver is we like to look at this as a zero ops platform and a DevOps-as-a-Service. So what this is it accelerates your development teams by giving them a configured, opinionated Kubernetes tool set with all the components that I mentioned earlier. Your teams don't have to learn all these, they don't have to research or develop or install all these tools. So what this actually is this is actually a software as a service platform. So the way that we deploy it is we deploy all these tools, and we're going to go into exactly what those tools are specifically, but this deploys on top of your Kubernetes instances out there. So that would be whether it's on-prem, whether you have Kubernetes on-prem or in the cloud. We deploy this to your Kubernetes cluster, all these tools, and we also keep it updated in the background for you, so you don't have to keep on updating. Like, let's say your CI tool needs to get updated, we update that automatically for you. We also provide real-time alerting and monitoring, as we can see here, to be able to observe and seeing what's going on with real-time troubleshooting. And another component that we have to Lens Autopilot is deploying. This is a big tool set, and we have engineers and experts where we deployed along with you. So we have a bucket of service hours where we give you a team that knows these tools inside and out, and they can help you monitor, or they can help you massage it into your organization, whether that's further configuring a component, or that is maybe even building DevOps pipelines. So whatever our customers need, we found that to be a critical component to the success of Lens Autopilot is the support that comes with it. So we, at Mirantis, we acquired Docker. So we have the Docker Enterprise components. So we have that expertise behind us to be able to deliver that. So let's jump into what we were talking about, some of the components before of Lens Autopilot. So we were talking about observability, security, the CI/CD, the code releasing piece. This is what we have under the hood. This is what we use. These are the best tools out there that we use for it. So with Lens Autopilot, each one of these tools can be, they're all swappable. So for example, like with the CD part, you could use Flux or Argo. And for the CI part, we use GitHub Actions, or you could use GitLab. These are the tools that we see that they're the best out there. We also another component that we have out there is the policy enforcer, which is Confessed OPA. So this just makes sure that all your networking policies, everything that you have set up in Kubernetes, actually is being enforced out there. We also have a lot of, we also found that Crane and KubeScan are two very good tools out there for scanning all of your network policy, scanning your role-based access control and making sure everything all the roles have minimum privileges out there. And also with the observability, Prometheus is one of the big golden standards out there. What this does is this gathers all the metrics from Kubernetes, and then we also build Grafana out there, which takes all those metrics and then it displays them. So you don't have to build out all those reports. We have all of the reports that most customers would like to see. Another component that we have here is something called Goldilocks, and what this does is this is a reporting tool for resource management. And what that means is if you have an application that is being underutilized, this would report that and say, hey, you actually, you don't need this much RAM, or you don't need this much CPU. We recommend lowering it. So we also have that tool. We also have that tool there. Where the big part where Lens fit in is Lens is for those who don't know already, it's our open source tool. And what it is it is a GUI for kube control. So kube control, for those that don't know, is a tool for administering Kubernetes by the command line. And what we do is we put a user interface on top of that to be able for our customers to be able to manage Kubernetes. And we bring Lens Spaces, which that is a collaboration tool for Lens, and so that teams can collaborate on Kubernetes clusters, and we found that to be very successful. And these are just some of the other components that we have. We have a lot of other tools that are very useful that aren't listed here. The last one that comes to mind is we have something called Falco. So what this does is this is more on the security side, and if someone logs into Kubernetes on a shell, you're going to want to be alerted when that happens. So we also have a lot of these other tools out there that we're bringing into Lens Autopilot, and customers can turn this on and off as they need it. So, and this is just a brief overview of what's under the hood. So what we've seen with teams is we've typically seen these numbers here for when you have a Lens Autopilot. So it would deliver these numbers right here. So when you don't have your team focusing on the ecosystem around Kubernetes, you can see like if you have a very well made CI/CD process, you can typically see a 5 to 10% increase in application deployment speed. With all of the security scans out there, you're going to have reports of what needs to be secured. You're going to see a reduction in security vulnerabilities, and you're also going to see a reduction in operational costs. So when for the biggest that we have here is your developers don't have to set up and configure things. They can actually sit down and they can focus in on on delivering value for Kubernetes. So the next piece we'd like to cover is like when we have Lens Autopilot there, how long does it take to deploy this and get this integrated in an organization? And we typically see this around in about 4 weeks and maybe a little beyond that. And the journey that we see is we first start off with our team sets up Lens and Lens spaces, and we set up observability into your Kubernetes platform. Then we set up some monitoring and security audits to make sure that we make sure that the cluster health is good, and we want to make sure we see if there's anything that needs to if there's anything to monitor application health. And then in the second week, we do an application assessment of your portfolio, and we set up self-service. And then in the fourth week, what we do is, this is a little more of the complicated piece, is we set up CI/CD and GitOps for automation. And that's when things really get going, is when you start deploying applications on Kubernetes using Lens Autopilot. And then beyond that, and that's when things really get going. And we see customers, that's when the value comes in for our customers is week 4. And then beyond that, we do monitoring, alerting, and secure. We do monitoring and alerting. One of our customers right here is Choosel. We have a case study out on our website about this, but they had a unique perspective with Lens Autopilot. They looked at it as an investment, an insurance plan. So one of the things out there with the Kubernetes ecosystem is, because there's so much out there, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you need to have a successful Kubernetes platform. So what we brought Choosel is we've accelerated their development, and then on top of that, we also provided them a battle ready, a turnkey Kubernetes solution. So that way, it's an insurance plan in the sense of like they weren't missing anything. And they were very happy with their Lens Autopilot deployment, and they continue to use it. We have this on our website for those who want to hear more. I'd like to thank you for any one time. I'd like to remind that the big value that we see with Lens Autopilot is for your development teams to be able to be more productive, in the sense of they won't have to research, install, configure, or test and build all of these components of Kubernetes that we outlined before. We also reduce the risk in missing something. So as we saw with Choosel, we bring a full Kubernetes a suite, all the ecosystem of everything that you'll need. And also with having a partner in the process to take on this operational complexity. With our expert engineers and our platform engineers to be able to support you. So that is Lens Autopilot, and I would like to thank you for everybody's time, and we appreciate that. Please reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.